Bleh.
All right, everybody. Jeff Frumess is back. You heard him last week talking about Hook.
Yo.
And now we are talking about a different weapon. We went from a hook to a big ol' hunting knife. Jeff, we are going to discuss one of my all-time faves, Scream. So, Jeff, 25 years ago, this month, Scream came out, totally changed the horror genre, totally, in my opinion, changed entertainment. I mean, ever since then, you saw teen characters differently in multiple things. Everyone was speaking very differently in their dialogue. Now, before 1996, what would you say, Jeff? Because I know you love your horror. That's what brought us together. You love it just like I do. What were some scary movies that you enjoyed growing up before Scream? Because horror was a weird thing in the early 90s, you know? So what'd you like as you were growing up in the 80s and 90s?
Definitely zombie stuff, yeah. Evil Dead, you know. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, anything really. I gravitated towards zombies. Return of Living Dead is like the number one for me, along with Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Dead Alive, Evil Dead, Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn, Army of Darkness, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, The Blob.
Oh, the Blob 88.
Yeah. The Fly. I mean, just like all sorts of, I mean, so much stuff. Although some of those I kind of go chronologically, I didn't get into some of those until I was a slightly bit older. I mean, Scream was also kind of like, you know, I'm born in 85. So, you know,
yeah, I was like
Scream
9
came out
when
in 96.
Scream came out. So we were very much kids. Yeah, totally.
So, but that was like an entry. That was part of the entryway into slashers, let alone horror in many ways.
Totally. Absolutely. For sure. Before I saw Scream, luckily my dad let me watch everything, which is pretty crazy. I was Freddy Krueger when I was 6 years old for Halloween, and the neighbors were terrified and disgusted. And my dad was like, "What? It's a movie," you know. Even though Nightmare on Elm Street, the original terrified me. Oh my God, what a brutal film! Beautiful film. But yeah, watching that as like a 5-year-old, you know, that's pretty crazy. But yeah, so before Scream, I loved Wes Craven's other stuff. Freddy was big in our house. Chucky. I'm trying to think. I never got into Hellraiser. That was too gross for me. But I'd say Freddy, Chucky, those were fun. Leprechaun. I was Leprechaun for Halloween one year.
Leprechaun is a lot of fun.
But those are gross comedies, basically, you know. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But then in comes Scream, a movie that just, you know, I know this might sound dramatic, but it truly, when I watched that finally, I didn't get to see it in theaters. Did you see it in theaters, or you probably rented it?
So the first Scream, I just missed the boat on Scream 1. Yep. I saw Scream 2 in theaters, I believe.
Me too.
So
and that was that was probably to this day one of my most favorite movie-going experiences, is seeing Scream 2 on opening night with my parents, packed theater, just shocked gasps and screams and laughs in the theater. Oh my God.
And you know what's funny? Those movies are not sexual. I mean, they are sexual. Hold on. Wait. Whoa. Because actually I have a lot of sexual stuff to say about them. I just mean in terms of like, they're not like the stuff in them. It's mostly gore stuff that makes it rated R. It's not there's no like nudity. That's what I mean to say.
Oh yeah, there's no nudity. There's very little, of course, as we know in the first film especially. Yeah, sex is a major topic of conversation, and
sex is important. Sex is important in Scream, but
absolutely. I mean, it's one of the rules to survive, you know. So we know that. But yeah, these films are not like when like you see on the posters or the VHS tapes back in the day, like clever and sexy. It's only sexy because of the cool, stylish clothes, and it's like, ooh, everyone's so cool. Which honestly, everyone was so.
Oh, they were so cool, but they're like young. It's like young, sexy teenagers, like, you know, doing their thing, that kind of thing. You know,
it's like sexy as the same word as shiny. Like, ooh, it's so shiny and cool looking. That's
great analogy. Great analogy.
It's not like hot. It's not crude. No. If anything, it's so elevated. Yeah, that's what I love about these movies is. It makes a lot of sense for people our age, kids, to actually want to see them and to enjoy them because they were a little universal that way. You know what I mean? It wasn't so adult.
It also ushered in the next wave of like teenage heartthrob sort of stuff. Like you have the original Brat Pack in the 80s, and then for about 5 years, for like the first half of the 90s, you don't really have that group. Those people might exist on films in a variety of ways, but you don't really see like this crop. It was like a crop that spanned across, Freddie Prinze Jr., Sarah Michelle Gellar, Matthew Lillard, Neve Campbell, Skeet Ulrich, like all these people, Rose McGowan, they just all sort of, they were like, for the later half of the 90s was like this beautiful era of it was a combination of horror, like teenage horror films, as well as high school comedies. Can't Hardly Wait.
American
Ethan
Pie.
Embry.
Yeah.
American Pie.
Jennifer Love Hewitt. Yeah.
Actually, American Pie is kind of a, like, I guess, you know what it is? That the real sweet spot of that is from like 97 to 2001. That's when that's like the core of that. The Faculty.
I love The Faculty so much. Also a Kevin Williamson script. But you're so right. Yeah, I feel like Scream, Clueless, and Romeo and Juliet. Leo and Claire.
Oh yeah.
Those three, which I just talked about that on this show. Another amazing 96 film. But I feel like those three films came at a time, between 95 and 96. And to a lesser extent, The Craft, which I loved, also in 96.
Right.
Fear with Mark Wahlberg and Reese
Reese Witherspoon.
But there's something about Clueless and Leo and Claire and Romeo and then Scream that absolutely put the power of film into teens. Like, wow. Right. Because like you're so right, because in the earlier half of the 90s, we were watching Robin Williams, we were watching Julia Roberts, we were watching like mostly
Brendan Fraser in Encino Man. Pauly Shore was dominating things.
Oh yeah. But that was also like lower on
20s.
The list.
And they were also in their like 20s. They weren't like really teenagers per se. Right. So it was just like much younger kids that like are sort of like the centerpieces of these films. She's All That, Never Been Kissed. Like you just have all these different varieties of really on the horror side and the comedy side. Those are the two genres that are really sort of dominating everything.
Oh, for sure. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I could talk to you for an hour just about that. I remember having an Entertainment Weekly issue that it had like a yearbook. It had like the whatever year it was, late 90s. It had like a yearbook of like, oh my God. And I had it for years. I don't have it anymore, but it had all those stars we're talking about and like, cutest couple, most academic, whatever. And I just remember,
I know this. Yo, I totally know what issue.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Abso-fucking-lutely.
Oh yeah.
They did that. They did that multiple years in the 90s. It was not just one. They did that a bunch. And that was, man, I used to love Entertainment Weekly for that. It's incredible to think that like, that was kind of like Twitter, like not actually Twitter, but like, you know what I mean? Like,
it was like news, making memes out of these fun, that you could tell like they were having fun with it, with that kind of stuff. And it really resonated with me. And it's funny because at that time in the, late 90s, I was an early teen, late, preteen.
Right.
I didn't really have a whole, like Entertainment Weekly was my friend. I didn't have a whole lot of friends who knew a lot of film stuff yet. And of course,
that's where you developed your language. You developed your language.
Oh my gosh.
Through
and
that
my movie
magazine.
Trivia, absolutely.
Sure.
And Fangoria, of course. Don't even get me started.
Fangoria and Rolling Stone was, and especially in relation to Scream, which we'll talk about in a minute. Rolling Stone, the Neve Campbell issue of Rolling Stone is was so important to me.
It's funny because I don't know if I remember that, but I remember very clearly all the magazines, including Rolling Stone, for Scream 2, the year later.
Remember that photo shoot where they're in the bathroom
of all the girls,
and they're in they're all wearing like pajama,
pajamas. And like,
shoot.
I think Tori Spelling was in the shower.
I had that on my
cover.
wall. Yep, I had that on my wall. Yep.
Yeah. Oh my God, that was like
that was the jam.
Like, oh my God. But okay.
Yeah, Rebecca Gayheart, Jada Pinkett Smith. They were all in there, man. That
cast was like truly talk about shiny. Talk about
fire.
Beautiful,
That's
shiny,
fire.
Fiery.
That's fucking fire. Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. But so So let's talk about Scream 1. So it came out wide December 20th, 1996. A very bold, odd time for this slasher. You know, it wasn't an indie film, but it very much feels a little underground, a little, you know, indie. It was a smaller budget, but with some big stars. But so December 20th, just a few days before Christmas, in comes this slasher that no one was really ready for. Like I said, I didn't see it in theaters, but I loved looking at the commercials on. I was like, "Ooh, I'm so intrigued." I was freaked out. I remember looking at the newspaper ads back, you know, in the day when they would do the full page ads.
I used to cut them out, and I had my my walls were tile to tile New York Times arts and leisure movie section, especially in the holiday, when the holiday movies would come around and they would take out the most creative ads. I remember the Grinch. Remember when the Grinch, and it was just the hand picking up the ornament, like that. Like those were so exciting and so integral to youth, and my youth, I should say. And I used to cut them out. I started in 98 all the way up till about 2002, and my room was wall to wall. There was no real estate. There was no blank space of just movie, all the movies that came out. I still have like fragments and tatters. And before I took it all down, I took a video camera and I sort of like documented the walls, because I wanted to remember. I just wanted to remember what it looked like, because I knew that it was not, you know, it was all coming down and there's no real place to keep that stuff. And so
speaking of walls, I had the Scream 1, 2, and 3 posters all on my wall, on one wall.
Nice.
My walls were filled with all these movies we're talking about, but those three, and some friends of mine, you know, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, some would be like, "Oh, like your room freaks me out. These like posters are scary." I'm like, "Oh my God, they're the best movies ever. Suck it up." You know, like, so I love, you know, all the stuff we put on our walls of this era. It's just amazing. But so, okay, a little bit of time period stuff before we get into the nitty gritty of this awesome movie we love. So time period, Space Jam, Star Trek First Contact, another Star Trek film, 101 Dalmatians, and Jerry Maguire were all very popular films during this time of year, okay? On the music side, I thought this was funny. Toni Braxton's Unbreak My Heart was number one for weeks.
Such a big song.
Such a big ballad, right? And number two, fighting with her, was R. Kelly, I Believe I Can Fly from Space Jam.
Oh, wow.
So how funny, yes. And of course, we know what, you know, has happened to him. Yikes. So yeah,
that song was huge, though. That was huge.
Oh my God, everyone on the playground would sing that. Yep. We all would make fun of that song. Absolutely, Space Jam. So that brings me to, Jeff, I'm going to throw it over to you. Tell us, what is Scream about in your own words? Tell us.
Okay, it's going to be hard. I feel like I kind of failed this with Hook. Like, instead of just giving you a basic synopsis, I go too deep.
Whatever comes to mind.
Scream essentially. Okay, Scream it's basically a fusion of a giallo, which is an Italian mystery whodunit, with a whodunit. It's a high school psycho killer. And what's interesting too is that this is like preschool shooting. This is like, this happens like Columbine was a very sort of landmark year where, you know, high school violence became very real, or a lot more realistic than what was being, you know, because up to that point, a lot of films were in high school and these were high schoolers getting killed. And then it very much happened in real life, but it didn't happen with a hunting knife. It happened with guns. And so it's kind of interesting to contextualize what Scream is. And Scream essentially is like a high school mystery whodunit giallo, basically surrounding psycho-esque sexual politics, because there's a lot of psycho DNA. The DNA of the movie Psycho, like with Hitchcock Psycho, is very much present in. So people like to always dwell on the, whatchamacallit, they like to dwell on the meta, you know, Scream being self-aware and meta and super smart, but nobody talks about how ingrained the movie Psycho, or how ingrained, the movie Psycho is in Scream. So
yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You're right. And it's quoted some, some major lines from Psycho, of course,
right,
which we'll get into, but absolutely. I always viewed it as like, if Psycho was like the grandmother and then Halloween was like the daughter, then Scream was like the granddaughter. You know what I mean?
That's
like,
great.
That in its own, those
that's
three
the
are
lineage.
Like a great
that's
trilogy.
the lineage.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
Absolutely.
Very, very profound observation.
Thank you. Yeah. Because, especially with the Jamie Lee Curtis connection to all three, with
that's
Mom
right.
in Psycho, she's in Halloween, and then she's in Scream just on screen in Halloween. I mean, it's so amazing.
It's like Psycho and Halloween are movies in Scream, which is the real world. Like it's like that. Like Scream is like the real world of that stuff. So it's almost like the meta. It's so weird. It's almost like the meta. It's like the And
that's why I love Scream so much, because watching Scream is like watching us. It's like watching friends talk about how great these movies are and how they're such a part of our lives, and we just quote them willy-nilly, so that's why it's so special, because it's like, oh my god, they are speaking the same language I speak, but so horror at this time, like we were saying, up until 1996, the slasher subgenre in the 90s was considered to be pretty much dead. It was not so good, a lot of diminishing returns and not as great sequels. I remember seeing like Jason Goes to Hell was like such a dud, and like we were getting into the Leprechaun movies, it was getting into just silly, not
sequel
good
glut.
territory.
Sequel glut was very rampant. You know what it was? It was it was inertia. It was fatigue. It was these fresh concepts from the 70s and 80s were just were developing inertia and becoming repetitive and derivative and predictable and boring.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one other thing we need to be aware of before we even talk about Scream. And it's this notion, it's not just Kevin Williamson's like brilliant script. It's also the fact that it's in combination with Wes Craven, who is fresh off of New Nightmare.
I know.
Which
I
is
love
the
New Nightmare, which is truly
it's my favorite one. That's my favorite.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that is my favorite of all the nightmares.
Oh yeah, even more favorite than one.
Yes, it is my funny enough, it's never been a sacred cow, the Nightmare on Elm Street films. It's never been a sacred cow to me. So, like the first Nightmare is not sacrosanct for me. I watched it very late in life and was quite underwhelmed by it. Yeah, it was not just did not connect with me in that kind of way. Yeah, I was fully into Scream, and Scream has never terrified or scared me in the least. It's always been more of like sort of a adventure. I know it sounds weird. It's almost more adventurous than like an adventure film set in a horror world than say like actually like scary. So in that kind of way, it's almost like kind of like Scooby-Doo-ish, which is what the third one gets accused of being a lot. But there's a little bit of Scooby-Doo in the first one too, in that kind of way. But you have essentially Wes Craven basically reinventing Nightmare on Elm Street in this brilliant way, then taking that approach to that script.
Nightmare
very scary.
Freddy was truly scary, after being such a comical villain. Now he is a true demon. Yes. Oh, I love that, Jeff. Yeah, because I know that sequel doesn't always get as much love as it deserves, because it's not a lot of death. It's more, of a drama here and there, but man, when I love that. And talk about Fangoria. I remember reading Fangoria, waiting for my mom to pick me up and reading all about New Nightmare and seeing the image of all the Freddys. There's that scene where there's a whole bunch of Freddys very quickly on like the side of the road, if you remember in the movie, and seeing that image. And I was like, oh my God, I can't wait to see this movie. So yes, exactly. So that's where horror was at this time. New Nightmare was so cool, but did not really make as big of a splash as they were hoping. So in comes Kevin Williamson with this script, his first script, which is just so amazing that this was his first, finished script. It was a big bidding war. It was originally called Scary Movie. Which we know, then
I have the 1993 draft, by the way. I don't know if you've ever read it or want to read it. I will send that to you.
Let me show you real quick, Jeff. Hold on.
Go ahead. Well, he's looking for something. I'll fill in the dead air. Oh, he's back. Never mind.
I have a print version of the script. Now, I don't know if this is the 1993 version, but I got this in New York on a visit when I was a kid with my family. Full, beautiful, glossy. I mean, and then it even had on the back. This was like promotion for
Oh
Scream
my
2.
God.
It had some stills of Scream
Yeah,
2.
you had some
Oh
stills.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. And it had stills from Scream 1.
What a wonderful
Oh my
artifact
God.
from your
It's
youth.
beautiful.
That's great.
Isn't it so
That's great.
beautiful?
Cherish
So
it forever. Yeah, man.
But yeah, so I know the 1993 version, the ending's just slightly different. There's a little bit more comedy to it.
It's gorier too. It's
But
way
yeah, at the
more
same time, it
grisly.
is gorier. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Miramax changed it to Scream apparently while they were shooting, and apparently it was because of the popular Michael Jackson and Janet Jackson song "Scream" that was big in 1995.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
I did not
apparently,
know
like
that.
that was a popular song with the two of them. So again, Michael Jackson connection, weird. And the Weinsteins were like, this should really be changed to Scream because Scary Movie doesn't sound scary. And it's funny because Kevin and Wes at first hated that idea, but it obviously worked well, you know. And then Scary Movie, what a bold twist that then the Weinsteins who own this franchise are then like, all right, we're gonna save the title Scary Movie for the parody franchise that we also own. And
pretty
for
ironic.
Years, many people would even sort of get the films confused. You know, many people feel like, oh yeah, Scream, that's the like funny movie. It's like, well, it's funny, but you're thinking Scary Movie. You know,
you would think it would be the reverse. You think that Scream would be the title of Scary Movie, and that Scary Movie would be the title of Scream.
Yeah,
in a weird kind of inverse way, like, you know, or I would imagine Scream with an exclamation point at the end. Scream.
So like, like kind of like old fashioned pulpy comedy, like exactly. You're right. Yeah.
Are you, by the way, are you annoyed that Scream is not Scream 5?
I am
that's
annoyed.
just called Scream. Yeah, it's very annoying.
I'm not a fan of that. I don't know. I'm hoping that they are sort of gonna mock / talk about
sure they will.
Halloween 2018 because I think that's why they're dropping the number. It's because Halloween just was 2018 Halloween, but I feel like embrace the numbers, guys. Like, it's cool that you have your legacy cast coming back for the 5th film. Also, most fans are just calling it Scream 5. I'm not going to call it Scream 2022.
Or
you know what I'm saying?
You call it 5 Cream.
Or 5 Cream. I know, which I was all on board.
I like that. I'm all for 5 Cream.
I thought it was kind of cool with Scream 4 making the A, the 4. I mean, you know,
you literally have the 5th version, the 5th one, and an S in the title. How are you not going to call it 5 Cream? I mean, that's just ridiculous. Like, you had the band. Remember the boy band? It was 5 Ive. You know,
there
was a boy band.
Right.
There was a boy band from the 90s, and it was 5 Ive. So, you know, so it's like, you know, I don't. This is a real sentence. These are all real sentences in the year 2021 going on 2022. Ready?
Yeah.
Hey, Mark, which Halloween do you like best? Do you like Halloween, or do you like Halloween, or do you like Halloween?
Exactly.
And then here's another sentence. This is also a real sentence. Ready? In order to enjoy Spider-Man 3, do I need to watch Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 3, Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man 1, Spider-Man 2 before watching Spider-Man 3? That's a real sentence.
Oh, totally. You're so right. You're so right. And with superhero movies, it's sort of been like that for a while, right? But now with horror movies, it's like
Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah. Or now then there's one a few years ago that was just called Texas Chainsaw. It's like, okay, you know, like at least have a subtitle or have a number, but just to keep calling it the same title with just the year feels like
unoriginal. It's stupid.
Yeah, why? The only thinking I have is, are you ashamed that like this is the
it's branding? No, it's no. You know what it is? It's pure brand recognition. It's just recognizing that the IP to go by the simple IP. I mean, think about it. That's why things get sequelized the way that they do, because, you know, even when you have a direct-to-video sequel to a movie that nobody cares about, it's still more profitable to be working with an IP that has some brand recognition. So we're going to give you the Tooth Fairy 2, or we're going to give you Jingle All the Way 2, or we're going to give you Home Alone 3, Taking Back the House, you know, like, so it's like, it's just like it really. I think it really comes down to that. That's kind of like the mentality there. But in the realm, what is your order for Scream? I'm curious. I think we might have talked about this already.
What is your order? Well, 1 and 2 are equal for me. Obviously, I love 1. I probably out of all of them have seen the first one the most, but I absolutely love 2. I think it is a brilliant sequel. I was shocked.
I love 2.
With one of the killers at least in 2. Now, see, real quick before I tell you this, with Scream 1, the whole movie was ruined for me, but it was because I wanted it ruined, which is terrible. So
why did you want that for yourself?
I know. So like I said, as a kid, I was 9, 10, saw all the commercials. I was just so curious. This movie looked right up my alley. And so my neighbor, my friend, Allison Cook, hello, Allison Cook, she happened to see it. I don't know if she saw it in theaters or if I remember specifically sitting outside of her house in the summer. So this must have been by the time it was on video, and she rented it before I got to rent it. And I was just so excited, Jeff, for months. For whatever reason, I didn't see it in theaters, even though I had already seen some adult movies in theaters. But so I said, Allison, okay, tell me everything. Like, did you love it? Like, this movie looks so good to me. She told me the entire movie, even including the ending with the killers, to the point I said, oh, I feel like you weren't supposed to tell me that part. But it didn't matter. It was such a thrilling story. I got to, the old school way of telling a story of like hearing a podcast before it was a podcast of the movie. That then the next day or two, when I rented the movie and watched it with my family, I knew everything, and I got to watch my family be shocked and say, oh, he's got to be the killer. You know what I mean? So I kind of have a weird special perspective on this where unfortunately I was not granted the joy of wondering who the killer was, but I got to be around people who didn't know. You know what I mean?
So what's interesting is, there's, when it comes to a movie with a reveal, like The Sixth Sense, you get to watch the movie 2 different times. The first time is the virgin watching where you don't know anything. And so your brain doesn't quite know where to go. And then you get to watch the film a second time through a different prism. So it's kind of like watching the film for the first time, but again, because you're enlightened. So you can watch Sixth Sense not knowing what's going to happen, and then you can watch Sixth Sense knowing what's going to happen. Right. And what that does is it gives you a brand new movie, essentially, because you're looking at things differently. So essentially what you got to do is you essentially were watching it through the reviewing prism. Like you already knew what was going to happen. So you're not watching it in the same way that maybe other people are watching it, because you're looking for particular things that because you know what the outcome is going to be. So it's you do get a unique viewing experience, but you get robbed of the surprise the first time. And I feel like both experience. I mean, listen, that's just what you wanted at that age. Like, fine.
I needed it to be spoiled, and that's what I got. I got it spoiled.
Because it probably brought you anxiety to not know. And in order for you to get through it, in order for you to even watch it, you had to know. Oh yeah. And it was your way of coping. So
absolutely.
That's valid.
So it's funny how and also when you think about it, it's the only film in the franchise where there isn't a mask reveal. There isn't a taking off of the mask. So it's kind of weird how I've thought about that, where I'm like, oh, how weird. The only movie that was spoiled for me, there is no reveal. I already kind of knew. So I don't know. That's just a weird little nerdy thing. But going back to your question of the list, 1 and 2 for me are just like cream of the crop, a beautiful combo.
Love them.
And then it's hard because 3 and 4 have both grown on me in the years.
We've actually discussed this on Facebook.
Have we?
But
okay. Yeah, we have. Oh yeah, we have.
A little bit.
It's hard. I think I still would go 3 and then 4, because even though I know 3 is kind of more of a comedy, it's a little messy. 4, I absolutely still hate the way 4 looks.
Hate it so much.
I love the crisp. I mean, when rewatching Scream for this show, and just whenever it's on, oh my God, it's a beautiful film. It looks the colors, and it's so striking.
They shot it in Wine Valley too. It's a beautiful place where they shot it. I love the village of Woodsboro.
Have you gone? Have you been there?
I've never been, but I got to tell you, there's something about those rolling hills. Like it just seems like such a place of that, which is so interesting to juxtapose where these incidents of terror are happening, but it's like I still, even though like people are dying, like I still want to be transported into that sleepy town of Woodsboro, you know?
Oh, take me on the Scream tour. Absolutely. Yeah. The only downside to that, even though it's stunning and a very instantly kind of iconic horror
You've been there?
Where
You've been there?
No, I've never been. Not yet. But the only downside to that kind of setting is, and this goes also to the all-white cast, is that Scream is very much, at least the first one, kind of about rich kids, dying.
Yeah.
Which, it's not a problem, but it's just kind of like not many people live in those beautiful rolling hills with Sydney's massive back porch. I mean, this all-white cast is a very nice, rich town. You know what I mean?
What's interesting? I think you just cracked the coolest idea for a Scream sequel where, wow, you just thought of something really cool where where it's Scream, but it's happening in a in not an affluent neighborhood, and nobody gives a shit because it's black people dying or some shit like that, or like like people of color are dying, and then all of a sudden, the whole idea takes on like it takes on a whole new level of. It's like, oh, we only care because it's fucking rich white kids getting murdered versus.
And then it becomes now a Jordan Peele horror film, which is so
it's Jordan. That
See?
is Jordan Peele's Scream.
This is why I want to see him make, right? See, so now it's just elevated it to 2022
that's really cool.
Horror.
Yeah, that's a cool way to because that's what Scream is all about, like looking at trends or like looking at like what's happening in the real world and had like all this commentary about like media or whatever you want to call it or like that sort of thing. Which, by the way, Tragedy Girls is almost a proto Scream remake in a weird kind of way.
Which is funny because Jack Quaid is in it and now he's in the new Scream. Yeah. So I need to rewatch that. I saw it once a few years ago. I remember liking it.
It's one of the best slashers for me. I said this last night. This is one of the best slashers for me in the last 20 years. That's how good it is. I think Tragedy Girls is so like brilliant and hip and just sharp. And I also really liked Freaky too. I thought Freaky was right up there. Last 20 years,
so fun. Yeah,
just so sharp.
Absolutely.
So well done.
Yeah.
And also very, very sort of, I think people will look back on Freaky and it will be a bit of a product of its times. Like there are like lots of the issues that it deals, some of the issues that it deals with, like it's very much, and that's the beautiful thing about horror is that horror is political. It is tackling issues through a prism. And that's why I think that's what Freaky does really well. It sort of like executes that brilliantly in the same way that Tragedy Girls does, in the same way that Scream did for its time.
Yeah.
So,
Brilliant. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. What's your order? Is it similar to mine? Or
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Like if you put a gun to my head and said which is better, I'm gonna go say 1 over 2, but really it is 1 and 2. I don't even consider 4 to be. I don't even. 4 is a redheaded stepchild to me. I hate 4. I hate it so much.
Do you hate it? Okay.
I really dislike 4, and we've talked about this, and I have it pulled up on my phone, not to read what I wrote, but just so I have it for notes. Yeah. My idea for why I think Scream 3 is actually the perfect conclusion to Sydney's story, and it's so fucking perfect. Yeah. In even if it's a messy film, it wraps things up in the perfect way for her story, her character arc.
Like when I was just shooting my Scream fan short this weekend, my sound guy Keegan goes, which is your favorite one and which is your worst? The worst has to be 3. And I was like, listen, when I first saw 3, even as a kid in the theater, I knew, I'm like, ugh. Even the opening with Liev Schreiber, with Cotton Weary and Jenny McCarthy, I was like, oh, this is not as exciting as the previous 2. Something's missing here. And of course, Columbine had just happened. So Scream 3 was definitely, and the Weinsteins, we know years later, really were meddling in the later sequels way too much.
Right.
And trying to get it perfect. Whereas 1 and 2, what is so impressive about 2 is they shot that, I read recently, they shot that in like September and October of 97, and it came out in December. It was the fastest turnaround. The script leak, I was on my old web TV reading the Scream 2 script leak, freaking out in the middle of the night, like, oh my God, this is so good. So
Jerry O'Connell.
Props to Kevin Williamson for like having to quickly come up with a new ending and everything. I mean, that's what makes Scream 2 so special, because there was less meddling, but a lot of issues. 3 and 4, too much meddling, too much trying to get it just like the original. First two.
The original idea for Scream 3 is actually the plot of The Following with Kevin Bacon. It is a cult of
that's interesting. I love
Ghostface. Yeah, there's a cult of Ghostface worshippers who are in on the plot. And originally, Sydney's supposed to be at the very end of that film. Sydney's supposed to be in a room full of people that have been recently killed, and they all just rise up. Like covered in blood, and they are like all just in on it. It was all a massive conspiracy, and I thought it was, and that's kind of like what the and then that got turned into The Following, and they did they went in a different direction, a different story, and I just thought that would have been so interesting. But the killers in Scream 2, and it's interesting, like we're talking about Scream, but really we have to talk about Scream 1, 2, and 3 when you really consider they're so attached, they're so
it's
continuous.
Such a beautiful like through line. It really is. Yeah. And it's all about the mother, which was really missing for me in 4.
Right.
Because for me, the Scream movies have always gone back to Maureen Prescott.
Which is why Scream 3 works so fucking well, man. That's why it works so well, because they sort of, in a way, what they did was they did what they tried to do with the new Star Wars films. They tried to bring Emperor Palpatine back to sort of loop it all in on itself. And that's kind of what they did with Maureen Prescott. They brought her ghost. What Scream 3 works as more than a slasher, it's actually a ghost story.
Right.
It is a ghost, and the ghost is not a literal ghost, because it's not a supernatural world, but the ghost of her mother is what sort of drives the story, and that's really what everything is all about, what her mother did and how, at the end of the day, everything is centered around sex and shame about sex, and how that I wrote this whole thing about how shame around sex is treated like a sexually transmitted disease in and of itself. And she transfers that, Maureen Prescott, she develops that STD first, and then she passes it along to her son, who was the product of rape.
Roman.
Roman. And then he in turn passes it to Billy by showing like Maureen steps outside her marriage and, basically does all this stuff. And, I'm not here to pass morality, good or bad. Like, who knows what the reality of Maureen's marriage was to Sydney's father? Like, we don't know. Like, we don't know why she was going to Billy's dad. And also acting out with Cotton, because she was with Cotton too. Like it's sort of summed up that she was just a slut, but who knows what was really going on behind the scenes. Again, she was a 17-year-old actress that was gang raped, trying to make it. Yeah.
Which also is what's so crazy about Scream 3 is, like with what we know with Weinstein.
It was very progressive. Very progressive.
That is really crazy that he even approved that kind of storyline, and that, it just was crazy. Like 15 or 20 years later, it's like, whoa, Scream 3 was real with this crazy Hollywood rape, sex stuff with the guy who produced these movies, which
means that, and I hate to say this because everybody, Wes Craven is like a canonized saint by all, and I'm not here to speak ill of the dead or suggest otherwise, but a lot of people, and listen, I like the way that Kevin Smith handled it. Kevin Smith, but at the end of the day, all of these people, Quentin Tarantino, all these guys that were making movies at Dimension, they all fucking knew. They all fucking knew what was going on. Let's not fucking. Wes Craven made 4 films with Dimension. He fucking knew.
He even made Curse with Dimension. Yeah.
Right. He made Curse with Dimension. He knew he was part of the horror Hollywood elite. He fucking knew the stories as well. And so what's interesting is that they inject that into the script, knowing full well that it's real, but yet it's like, it's okay to express it through the story, but we're not going to blow the whistle on it. And again, I'm not I know that the
Right.
system, it's systemic, and that,
Yeah, yeah.
part of it is like, keep your head down and just work and do your thing. I'm not making excuses for anybody. I'm not condemning anybody. I'm not condemning Wes Craven. I'm not condemning anybody. I'm just simply saying,
Yeah.
like, calling a spade, that he probably fucking knew what was going on, and that's why that shit is in there. But it's interesting how, like, him and, like, even Robert Rodriguez, who, sort of took, they took their own digs with Grindhouse with the
Right.
Weinsteins, going so far as to, I forget what they put in there, and Peter Jackson making one of his orcs look like Harvey Weinstein.
Oh my God, I forgot about that. Yeah, I did.
So it's like all these guys. It was an open secret. It was an open, and then all of a sudden in 2017, everybody's wearing Times Up pins, like it's like, oh, it's out in the open now. But like, they all fucking knew, and some of them made performative gestures that meant something, and some of them sort of didn't. But the point being here is that, yes, Scream 3 was really ahead of its time and deals with, like, this notion of stuff that was really happening in Hollywood. And then sort of like what happens is, and how this connects to the psycho aspect of it all, is that Maureen passes that shame onto Roman, who then passes that shame onto Billy about what's going on with his dad, and then his mom leaves. So there's like there's your psycho aspect right then and there. His mom leaves, and he ends up going, and he not only kills Maureen, he rapes her too, which is sort of,
well, see, that's where it gets fuzzy.
Okay,
we
why is
don't
that?
know that we don't know specifically. See, because there are different. I used to think that, but then the more I've nerdily read about this,
right, and you've read the script as well.
Read the script, and then, because that's the thing, also in the script, and I'm pretty sure in the first film it's briefly mentioned somewhere that, like, her mom was hanging in the middle of the town, but then by Scream 3 it says that she was just found covered in blood in the house. We don't even know. It gets a little confusing because we don't even know, was Sydney home during that time? Because in the first film, she and Gail are talking about it, and Gail says, you saw someone look like Cotton, but we don't know, was Sydney, like, in her bedroom when, like, this was happening, or was she coming home?
She might have been coming home.
It's surprising how, like, we actually never got the clear details of where Sydney was, what she was seeing. It's always alluded. But so when it comes to the rape, yes, I know what you mean. I for a while thought that. However, I actually think what happened was Cotton and Maureen had sex, and then a few minutes later, Cotton leaves, and Billy's right there waiting and goes in. So it looks like she was raped.
She was raped. And
but actually, I don't know if Billy... But I could be wrong. There are, like, two different theories, but I don't know if Billy raped her. If so, that's really, really twisted, and what a terrifying backstory.
It's just interesting how part of what's interesting is, like, it's this connection of sexuality. Like, so for instance, he's been with Sydney for a whole year, or even longer than a year, because they were dating when all that had gone down, and Sydney is still a virgin. So he wants sex from Sydney, that this girl that he's in this loving, committed relationship with. And how does that tie into Sydney's mother sleeping with his father, causing his mother to leave, and what that means in all that? And I actually have to pull it up. I'm going to pull it up real quick, and I'm going to read that part. I won't read the whole thing. I'll just read that one little snippet of what I wrote, because I every time I try to regurgitate it, I always get it wrong. I'd rather just read what I wrote. And that was the brilliance of Scream. It set up a whole movie's worth of events a year before the beginning, which not only sets Sydney off to start the series, but also allows things to come full circle so that they can wrap up in a nice trilogy bow. But it also presents its own problems, like Kill Bill or episodes 4, 5, and 6. Once I watch Scream, I have to watch parts 2 and 3 in order to take in the whole story, in order to feel a sense of closure. In another great nod to the first film, Sydney uses her door. Oh, wait, no, sorry. Let me skip ahead here. It turns out the ultimate catharsis that Sid needs. Well, here's one thing that's interesting. It turns out that the ultimate catharsis that Sydney needs to find for everlasting peace is only going to come by confronting the ghost of her mother and all the secrets that she left behind. This includes the biggest secret of all, a half-brother via Hollywood executive gang rape, assault from the time Maureen pursued her acting career, blah, blah, blah. Hold on. It begins. Okay, here we go. It begins in the first film with Billy punishing Sydney because she has never given him the one thing that he wants. So Billy wants sex, right?
Yeah.
The one thing that Sid's mother freely gave to Billy's father, causing his own mother to leave. Yeah. So it's almost like Billy wants sex from Sydney, which is the same thing that Sydney's mother gave to his father, which caused his own mother to leave. It's a Freudian pretzel, and he can't feel complete, or perhaps he can't have any closure until she puts out for his incel ass, thus allowing her to break the golden rule of horror movie virginity and die. So what's interesting is that in order for him, or maybe part of what Billy's motivation is, in order for him to sort of be okay with everything that happened that he's aware of, that he knows and has been keeping from Sydney, is that he needs to consummate his relationship with Sydney physically in order to, it's almost as if it's like an exorcism of the trauma of everything that happened from his family.
Wow, that's interesting. And how funny, one of his first lines in Scream is, "I was watching The Exorcist tonight and I thought of you." Whoa, right. Jeff.
Right? Oh. Okay, right?
Okay.
And then here's the thing about, okay, so it really starts with Maureen in the game. When her son comes knocking, she transfers the shame around what happened to him by rejecting him. That's Roman. In her eyes, he is a lasting legacy to the part of her life that you would rather forget. Roman then passes this sexually transmitted disease of shame to Billy with Stu, the impressionable sidekick, who, by the way, I think hands down, bar none, it's never said. There's never anything that tells us. I think Stu loves Billy on some level. There is some sort of like love there was an that's article, deeper than friendship.
Like, oh, totally. I know what you mean. There was an article, and I know when the movie first came out, and people still to this day are like, oh, they were gay, right? When no, it's not that. But there was an article earlier this year with Matthew Lillard, and there was I forget who wrote it, but really went into depth on Matthew on Stu's hatred of women and obsession with men, specifically Billy. So yeah, there's something there for sure. There
is something there in the subtext of their relationship, because at the end of the day, bottom line, when they ask Stu, what's your motivation, Stu, and he says peer pressure. Right. But I think that's a cop out. I think on some deeper level, like, again, I ask myself the same question when I watch Reservoir Dogs, which, for those of you who are not aware and who have not seen Reservoir Dogs in this light, you must. Reservoir Dogs subversively is a story about star-crossed lovers, Romeo and Juliet style. Mr. White and Mr. Orange are star-crossed lovers in Romeo and Juliet. They have a secret love where they come from different worlds. Mr. White comes from the crime world and Mr. Orange comes from the undercover cop world. And what happens is they develop a romance outside of the job that they're performing. And the reason why I've come to believe that is because when I ask myself, why does Mr. White, a guy who did time for his bosses, he did time. He did not roll his bosses. He did multiple years in the slammer to protect these people. Why is he suddenly willing to turn a gun on them for a dude who's bleeding out, by the way, who he is only known for a few weeks? And the only thing that comes to mind is love. He loves him. They love each other. And then here's the flip side of that. The police barge in. Mr. Orange is rescued. He's undercover, right? He has been rescued from the whole operation. All he has to do is just wait for them to put the cuffs on Mr. White and take him away. But what does he tell Mr. White? He says, I'm a cop, because he can't betray his true love. He has to come clean about who he really is.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
To his love. And then what does Mr. White do? He starts crying. He starts breaking down in tears. But it's not just because he murdered his bosses and caused this whole Mexican standoff thing to happen, but also because the man that he loves is the thing that he hates more than anything, a cop.
Yeah.
And you have the whole scene with the wedding ring. right? He flirts with putting on a wedding ring and then he decides not to. I'm telling you that. And then, you can get into all sorts of stuff about being undercover and what that might mean. But my point with all of that is that when in doubt, when you're trying to figure out what a character's motivation is for doing something, you can always go back to love. And in this case, why does Stu murder for Billy when really he has no skin in the game? What skin in the game does Stu have? He doesn't. Billy is his best fucking friend.
Yeah.
He loves his best friend. And that love might go into the romantic variety, but he deeply loves his best friend. And maybe in his mind, he thinks that they could finally be together if Sydney's out of the picture.
Yeah.
You just got to murder Sydney, and then Billy will feel the same feelings that I feel for him, and we can finally be together. And so peer pressure is a superficial sort of thing that he might say.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why he says, I always had a thing for you, Sid.
Right.
And you can kind of write this off.
That was improvised, apparently. Yeah.
Right. I mean, they did have and they also did have an on-set, whatever you want to call it, fling thing.
Oh, yes, they were together.
Maybe that, yeah. So maybe that also like influenced that improv. But it's just interesting how Stu is a sarcastic, sardonic sort of person, and maybe even might like project feelings of attraction onto the person that's seeing the object of his innermost desires. If you want to get really, really, really
I
deep
love,
about it.
Oh my God, Jeff, can I just tell you, I'm loving this conversation. Yeah, this is great.
Right?
Totally. What you're saying absolutely makes sense for sure. And then in a very weird twist in the end, which I've seen this movie, I don't know how many times, but even just rewatching it, it really still is so disturbing. The stabbing of each other. You know what I mean?
And then take it to one more level. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, and how it's
literally
Carol
penetrating
Clover.
each other.
Absolutely. It's Carol Clover, the whole final girl thing that I learned in college.
Yep.
With the knife is the penis, and the girl
the phallus. Yes,
running away
it's the
from
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So now
with Jason is the frustrated guy that can never get laid, and so he takes his giant machete and sticks it in girls. And so here these guys are in front of Sydney, and they are stabbing each other. And then it's interesting too. When revisiting the director's cut of The Frighteners, where Jake Busey, there's a scene where he is getting pegged by a butcher knife. Yes. It's like
who's
astral,
holding the knife?
It's like the Dee Wallace is stabbing him with the knife, and then but what's interesting is that part of their it's part of their paranormal, psychic, sexual play that he gets pegged with the phallic object that she's using, and how that same sort of principle is happening in Scream, where they are literally in front of Sydney, in front of the girlfriend. They are demonstrating their love for each other, and maybe not Billy does not necessarily feel the same way that Stu does, or who fucking knows, like again on subconscious, beneath subconscious, although I would say no, I think it's one-sided, because I think that
it's one-sided, and even in the stabbing it's one-sided, because Stu even says, you cut me too deep, like Billy gets too overzealous. That was not part of their relationship.
Yes. So it's almost like Stu kind of thinks of it as like we're stabbing each other, but then like Billy is like, no, like I'm out to hurt you, or I'm inflicting hurt on you because you're frustrating me, and you stab me, you cut me too deep. And so it's as if Stu is like, I'll play this game. Like, to me, it's a game. Yeah, we're gonna murder people. I'm gonna murder my girlfriend. He murders his own girlfriend, because now that Tatum's out of the way, and now that Sydney's out of the way, we can finally be together. But it's like, it's all a game for him, and then he gets stabbed too deep. And then suddenly it's not so. That's the first time in the whole time that this has been happening that Stu finally goes, oh my God, this isn't a game. Like, I've been cut really deep. I think you cut me too deep, man.
It's like the first time we see him not smile, like in the whole film. You're right. Yeah.
So there is so much like psychosexual Freudian interlocked, intertwined thing. And then the thing that's amazing about Sidney Zarkin, here's what I would say about Scream 3 and why Scream 3 works so well. We talked about how Scream 3 is like a ghost story, right? And like Maureen and that sort of thing. But here's the middle part of that. The middle part is Scream 2. And this scene was improv by Wes Craven. He came up with this himself. There now, part of being in college is like there's like this Greek aspect of being in college, whether you're in a frat or a sorority or drama, plays, theater, Greek theater, which ties in with Greek tragedy. And the Greek tragedy that Sidney is a part of, she's playing Cassandra. Hold on, I gotta find the part about Cassandra in here. She's playing the part of Cassandra, and the Cassandra's ultimate tragedy, Sidney's ultimate tragedy, and what she has a whole conversation with David Warner in this.
Love that scene.
Yeah, it's a great scene, and that was made up. I
do remember hearing
on the spot.
Yeah, love that.
They did not have that in there. He brilliantly, and that's a great example of a director who doesn't have the script, who didn't write the script, I should say, but finding a way to just sort of like inject character and like into it. I'm like stalling as I scroll. I don't want to leave dead air.
Yeah, I love all that
I found
it stuff. And I love that the ending of 2 is on the theater. It's on the stage.
Right. Oh, she's acting out her life on the stage. Yes.
And real quick before you get into it, this is also very nerdy of me, but I do enjoy, obviously the fourth one switches this, which I was okay with, but for 1, 2, and 3, the beginning setting is the same as the ending setting. So the beginning of the movie of Scream, which I thought was always really cool. Beginning of Scream, it's Drew Barrymore's house. Ending of Scream, it's another house. It's the party house, 2, it's in a movie theater. Ending, it's on a stage in a theater.
Oh, yeah.
Right? 3, again, house, Count Weary's house. And then at the end, it's really the party house, but then it's Sidney's house at the end where they're going to watch a movie, and I do love that. Ending. She just lets the door open. 4 then switches that, which I'm okay with, where, because then we have that pattern. How do we switch that now? It ends in there's a separate location, which I'm cool with. But just a little nerdy thing that I thought of, speaking of the theater. But go for it. Tell us.
In Scream 2, Sidney plays Cassandra from a classical Greek tragedy called Cassandra. In her mythology, and this is Sidney's personal mythology, she is cursed to always tell the truth with no one believing her. And what is that truth? The truth is, stay away from me, because if you get too close to me, you will die. And that's what happens to Sidney over and over again. So you can kind of look at Scream as like sequel-itis, or you can try and elevate it to this like other thing. And it works on that level where basically she is telling the truth and no one will believe her. Like, don't get close to me, best friend. Don't get close to me, boyfriend, Jerry O'Connell. What's his name?
Derek. Love him.
Derek, don't get too close to me because you are going to die.
Right.
And it's like, no, Sid, you're crazy. That is an unrealistic. I mean, that's a irrational fear that you have. So she tells the truth and no one believes her, just like Cassandra does. It is the embodiment of Sidney's own prophecy that started in the first film for me. Stay away from me or you will get badly hurt or most likely die. That's what happens to Randy. That's what happens to everybody. Dewey gets stabbed. Gail gets shot. So if you don't die, you're going to get badly hurt. And they always don't heed this warning, and then they pay the price. It is an extension of the idea that she will always live as long as everybody and everything that she loves or cares about dies. It is a huge part of what must fuel her isolation in part 3. So now she works out of her house as a crisis like counselor, and it's like, stay away from me. Like, I need everybody to stay away from me or else they're going to die. And that's why meeting Kincaid, which is the name, by the way, from Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Kincaid, same name.
Cool. Oh, I love that.
The
awesome.
Black kid in part 3 is named Kincaid.
Oh my God. Yeah.
So Kincaid changes all that. Like Sidney, his favorite scary movie is his life. Right? As a homicide detective, he has seen his own share of death, and it has left its own scars that might align with Sidney's. He also survives the final Ghostface encounter, takes a knife to the shoulder for Sidney in the process. It galvanizes his ability to fully understand her and her past trauma and any kind of future that they might be able to have together. So, his romantic presence was toned down in Scream 3, but originally he was a lot more of a love interest. And so having him there with them at the end, deciding to watch a movie and her leaving the door open is just the perfect. It's the result of all the transformation that Sydney undergoes throughout the trilogy. Just as she goes to watch a movie with her friends, an unknown wind opens the door to her house. But the movie's physics don't add any incidental score to suggest a thrilling element is coming. Instead, there is silence as Sydney knows that there's nothing but the wind and that she is free of everything that was weighing her down and imprisoning her. She is okay to leave it open to the whole world. No longer does she need to lock it out. It's the perfect fucking
Did you write
ending.
that?
Yes, I wrote that.
Oh my God, Jeff, you are like,
thank you,
so good. Oh wow, yes.
Yeah, no, I was reading from you. That was something that I wrote. I read
oh
that was what
God.
I was reading to you.
I love that. Give me a copy of that essay. That's amazing.
I will actually. I read that essay on my YouTube channel as well. That's like part of that.
Nice.
But I started off as just a Facebook review for 31 Days of Halloween, and then I started to like really pull apart all of like the psychosexual craziness of Scream and then how it all ties together. And that's why no matter what happens in Scream 5, no matter what happened in Scream 4, the original Scream trilogy 1, 2, and 3 is a perfect encapsulated arc for Sydney, because the thing is, and here's the thing about Ghostface. The thing that's interesting about Ghostface as a killer, Ghostface is a common Halloween costume, which by the way is actually called Father Death. So what it is it allows anybody to become the killer. Anybody can become the personification of death. And that's what Ghostface is. Ghostface is just a personification of death, or allowing any individual to become an anonymous personification of death.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Right? So
rewatching the film for this show, this was my first time ever actually listening to the audio commentary on the Blu-ray of Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson. And speaking of Father Death, that was Wes Craven's idea, apparently, to call it that so that we would think more about Sydney's father, that whole red herring.
Interesting.
Yeah. So isn't that, but you bring up such a great point. Yeah. Anyone can be Death.
Which is why the Scream series, and this is why Neve Campbell is so important. The Scream series is not about Ghostface. That's why we haven't got Scream 7, Scream 8, Scream 9, Scream 10. It's all predicated on Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox and David Arquette by extension, because much like Evil Dead, and they've tried in vain to sort of they want to transcend Ash Williams from Evil Dead, Bruce Campbell. Like we have to get away from Bruce Campbell, but the problem is that just the way that Michael Myers is Halloween, and just the way that Freddy Krueger is Nightmare on Elm Street, and Pinhead is Hellraiser, Ash is Army of Darkness. It's not the Necronomicon, because anybody can become a demon. And by extension, Scream is about Neve Campbell. It's about the final girl. It's a final girl film. So essentially the identity, that's why the identity of Ghostface was never important. We've never cared really who Ghostface is. That's why we're so accepting of like the ridiculousness of Billy's mom or Mickey, that nobody gives a fuck about being.
Yeah, no one cares about Mickey, but nobody Mrs. Loomis. Oh my God!
But what's fun, and and that also has a precedent in Friday the 13th, because Mrs. Voorhees is the original killer, so it works. Yep. But like the notion of who, like, even though we're always trying to figure out who Ghostface really is, it's never, whenever they show up, I feel like it never really makes an impact who's behind the mask. It's just more about like that this theme of death personified keeps emerging in all of these different ways. And we've heard, to sort of scoot over to Scream 5 for a second. Yeah. My prediction is 100% one of the three is going to die in the opening scene, and it's going to set the precedent. Okay. I think Courtney Cox is going to die in the opening. I'm calling it right now.
I don't think so, because she's in too many different outfits in the trailer. I don't know.
Oh, is she? I haven't seen the trailer. I have not seen the trailer.
Sorry. Okay,
don't even say that. Don't even say that.
Sorry about that. Okay, never mind. Delete.
I will say this. I am very concerned.
And I'm very proud of you for not seeing the trailer. Good for you.
Even when I saw Nightmare Alley, I like put my head down and put my earbuds in, because I did not want to know anything.
I scroll by any other, because now they're like blasting on Instagram.
Okay, so then it's
more
not
ads, but
it's not possible that so it's definitely not Gail, which leads me to believe that Jenna Ortega, who to me, I don't know what it is about her.
I know you love her. I still need to see
her.
that movie you love her in. I haven't watched The Babysitter.
There's something about her, like there's something about her energy that's very much like shares the energy of Neve Campbell, who is my forever love. Like I love Jenna Ortega because she makes me feel that love that I feel for Neve Campbell, really. And that's why I think she's so great. I mean, she's a great actress and I think she's awesome and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, but I'm very worried for her in the new Scream. I saw her poster. I saw her poster placement and I said, that's like Drew Barrymore poster placement. I'm a little worried. That
yeah, did you see the poster with all of them on it?
Yes, that's the only thing that I've seen. And so, but
so you have not seen the trailer. This is so funny because so many fans out there are like,
I know nothing.
Wow.
I know nothing. Well,
I'm not
except that you're probably right. If there's that many outfit changes, and listen, that's
just
totally
me like really nerding out, but like I can sort of, I just have always been able to like call these things like, I don't want to give it away, but I just have a feeling.
So maybe it's fucking Neve Campbell.
I don't think it's her either. My thought is,
all right, we can't have this conversation. Okay. Wait, you think it's David Arquette? You think David Arquette?
I just think so. And a lot of people
I thought he would be the backbone of the movie.
No. Oh, see, I think
okay. All right. No more.
But in my opinion, I mean, Dewey really should have died a few movies ago. You know, like he was supposed to not make it.
That theory? You know that theory?
What's the theory?
You need to go on YouTube and look at the theory that Dewey is actually the mastermind behind everything.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh my God. Yeah. I don't know if
he's secretly in love with Sydney and that
Dewey
is
that I love is not capable of doing that. No, sorry.
Dewey, it's a very interesting thing.
In the original cut of the film, Dewey is dead.
I know, he's dead. He dies.
It was Wes Craven who was like, all right, well, I think honestly Wes Craven loved working with David Arquette so much, and we know that David, while making this latest film, was like apparently very emotional without Wes. I have a feeling they just bonded.
Oh, was he? I did not know that.
Really? He did say that in interviews that like some days were just really tough for him.
I bet.
On set, which I believe that's really sad,
sense.
You know?
Yeah.
But so I think they just really bonded so much that Wes was like, well, let's just shoot this just in case people like your character, because I think they will. And then in Scream 2, he has that vicious knife in the back. You know, it's not until 3 and 4 did he become more untouchable. And I do think it was a mistake in 4 not killing one of them. I was surprised that out of all these new characters... Well, it was supposed to be Neve Campbell.
Neve Campbell was supposed to die. Yeah, she was supposed to die. And the original idea behind 4 and 5, like when that was going to be a new trilogy, and it was a brilliant idea, frankly. It was that Jill, played by Emma Roberts, who is first of all is fucking awesome. Second of all, absolutely gorgeous, beautiful girl. Like, just totally. Yeah,
she's
stunning
great
girl.
in 4. I do have to say her motive was pretty great. I don't need friends, I need fans. I mean, that worked for me. That was like one of the best parts of the film. Yeah, she's
supposed to be in Scream 4 and 5, and 5 and 6, and we're supposed to know that she's
even
the killer.
6. Oh wow.
Yeah, okay. So it's like, or we know that what she did, and it's the first time, and that Dewey killer. Yeah, Dewey is onto her. And that's what that's what those later films are supposed to be about. Like, and I thought that was a
Sydney
really cool.
Supposed to die? Like Sydney
dies in part 4. That she does not survive. They reshot that ending. The movie is supposed to end with Sydney dying or getting stabbed and dying, and that also doesn't work for me. I wrote a whole article about I was like, by part 4, you would imagine that Sydney keeps a fucking revolver on her person at all time. This whole
and that's so funny because there's a line about that in the trailer for the new one, but I won't say what it is.
Don't tell me. Don't tell me. But you would imagine. I imagine that she was. I always said this, and I had forgotten when I had written this. I wrote an article called "The Miseducation of Sydney Prescott," which was just all about her. And it was funny at the time when we weren't going to get a new Scream series. I actually envisioned Scream 5 and 6 as being non-horror sequels that were more like Friends than
That's so funny.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. I think you'd appreciate it. It was like I made like 2, and there was just like they were nothing drama. I like plots that have nothing to do with horror, but yet because we're so attached to these characters that we just want to see them live normal lives and be happy.
Right. So I don't think Sydney should ever die. I think that ruins everything. And like you're saying, and you have a great point, that we see Ghostface on these posters, but it's really it's a movie about Sydney. She is the Michael Myers, the Freddy Krueger. Like this is her franchise.
She's it's a final girl. She's the final girl. Is like, if you have a poster, like, look, if you have a poster and mostly you always see Ghostface on the poster with like all the other monster greats. But the reality is, if you want to put make an accurate poster, you would have Ash on there, who's not a bad guy, and you would have Sidney Prescott. She has earned the right, and frankly, you would even have Laurie Strode. Like these
Jamie Lee Curtis. And that's funny. That's because of Scream. I feel like that's because of Neve Campbell that now Jamie Lee Curtis,
I think you're right,
has really embraced this franchise, and now she is equally the face. You know what I mean? It's funny how the two different franchises keep ping-ponging back and forth
on each other,
each other.
For sure.
Oh yeah, I'll give that to you. But I don't want to say anything about 5, but I just don't love. My own idea for 5 would be like 2, where we go with them to a different location. I thought that was so smart with 2, that it's a copycat in a new area, different area we get out of California. I don't love the setting of 5. It feels too much like 4 to me. So it'll be very interesting, because that's the thing. Halloween, Freddy, Nightmare on Elm Street, it's always like in Illinois. It's always the same. Right. It's Haddonfield, it's Springfield or Springwood, whatever. What I love about the first 3 films is that, yes, Woodsboro's iconic.
Yeah, the setting changes.
But Ghostface is everywhere. It's always someone new behind the mask. That's why I don't love the new tagline of "it's always someone you know." I think it's clever, but at the same time, I almost feel like, wouldn't it be more like it's always someone new? Like the terror will continue because it's always some other crazy person that's going to find a reason to go after you and the people you love. You know what I mean?
I think the best way, to be honest with you, I honestly think if you were going to make another script, like let's say like if they called me in, like right now, like, Jeff, think of a new Scream movie. Here's millions of dollars.
So jealous. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so you're with me, Mark, and we're sitting there. Thanks. We're boiling it down, and you know what I would pitch? My pitch would be, let's tell this, and we don't see this enough. I want this Scream film to be from Ghostface perspective. I'm so tired of the whodunit. Invert it even further. Go with what you were going to do with the original Scream 5 and 6, and instead you could make, because here's the thing, you would get additional longevity without it feeling derivative or repetitive if you made a trilogy of films with an arc that was from the perspective of the killer, someone whose antagonist is equally as strong or as potent as Sydney's protagonist, and make it even better where Sydney is like romantically connected or involved or in that person's life in a way that leaves Sydney sort of like conflicted about like her gut feeling is telling her that somebody in her life is like this thing, and like she doesn't want to believe it. Basically like Dexter, but like, with Scream. And I think that would be the best way to explore for one final time, at least with Sydney, because eventually what's going to happen is Neve Campbell is going to be done, and they're not going to stop making Scream films. So what are they going to do? They're going to have to start over, and they're going to start over. I'm sure they will. Maybe it'll take 10 years or 15 years from now, when they finally reboot Scream properly. We did get that TV show, but they're going to start again, and they're going to have to do it in a way where they don't spill all their cookies like right off the bat. They spill their cookies every single movie as if there's not going to be another one. Yeah. Like as if there's not going to be another one, So it's kind of like, I don't know. It
is interesting for sure. I wonder if any of those original ideas for 5 and 6 are going to creep into this, or
maybe
if because that would be interesting, because I am a little worried Kevin Williamson he's producing, but he's not involved in the script, but he loves the script. So, I mean, I guess it's got to be good. Did you like Ready or Not?
Yes, I did like Ready or Not. And I thought it was a really fun film. And I thought that those guys, they seem like perfectly capable, but part of me really just thinks like at this point, it's like, just give it to Kevin Williamson. Like let him write and direct it. Why can't he direct it? He knows these
people so well. Yeah. I think honestly, I don't think he enjoyed directing Teaching Mrs. Tingle. I think that was so But I mean, that was at a different time when these movies had a ton of pressure on them,
He is the worthy successor to.
Oh yeah, I think so
too. To Wes Craven for Scream, and if anything, why not have the Ready or Not? It's like inverse it. Let Kevin direct it and let the Ready or Not people produce it and sort of inject their sensibilities in that way, or at least maybe how about like, have them co-write the script with Wes, or like throw ideas. I mean, not to Wes, to Kevin Williamson or something, or have him be more of a producer than say just an executive producer. Like he's probably a name only just to sort of endorse the thing the way that John Carpenter is. Why not have him straight up be producing working as a creative producer? Like, he doesn't want to be the director on the day-to-day, but in there in a creative producing role where he is really sort of helping to shape what is going on behind the scenes in a meaningful way, where we really get that continuity from the first two films.
Totally. Hey, I agree with you. I'd sign up for that. Yeah.
So,
all right, Jeff. Wow, this is amazing. Before I let you go, let's go back to Scream 1. I love this full discussion on all this because this is just amazing. And isn't it amazing? I mean, Kevin Williamson should be so proud because he got this idea based on the Gainesville Ripper. And here we are breaking down a whole legacy. It's much more beyond, much beyond just like a slasher, But so going back to Scream 1, which just turned 25, give me your 3 favorite scenes, characters, moments. Like, give me some of your favorite brief things from that movie specifically. What comes to mind when you think of the first film? Of course, Drew Barrymore, the opening we know is absolutely perfect. I
know this sounds weird. I don't know. I just like, I literally, one thing we didn't discuss that really sort of cemented, Neve Campbell was like really my first like actress crush, or, when you get into like when you crush on an actor or actress and like, you become like infatuated from like a hormonal perspective. Like, she was my I loved her.
Oh yeah, I had worshipped her on her. Like, it was amazing how like she really broke through because she was sort of like a more elevated teen idol. Like you had Jennifer Love Hewitt, but Neve Campbell was like more polished or something. Do you know what I mean?
She was more real. She felt more real. Like Jennifer Love Hewitt was like literally can't hardly wait. Like you could never get her like in real life.
Last summer. Yeah, she was so untouchable. Whereas Neve was like, she really was your girl next door, and she's kind of just normal, but she's also so special. Yeah.
Yes, and she just is. She was just. There was just something about her look and everything, and so I had that Rolling Stone issue, and I can't tell you, like back in the day, pre-internet, before our brains were wired to always scroll to the next screen, where you could just stare at pictures for very long periods of time and study them, and you would study them and read text, like next like interviews or whatever. And I used to I like cut out the pictures of Neve Campbell, and I just was like in awe, in admiration of her and her energy and her beauty and this, that, and the other. And so there's no particular moment in the original Scream. It's just the whole movie as a whole. It's the world. It's like being like an adolescent, kind of wishing I was in high school and wishing I was like, maybe not wishing to be around like murder per se, but like just to be in like this world where something like, crazy is happening on that kind of level. Like, I can't
talking with these cool people around a fountain.
Right. Talking about movies, hanging out in Blockbuster. There's going to be a big party. Oh my God. So it's more about like being transported into this high school world when I'm not quite in high school. So I can't really like point to like like particular moments because the whole movie is all encompassing of that. Right. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't, totally. I can't
it's
really
funny how the movie has a dreamlike quality to it, even though it is so of the time, very, real, but like rewatching it, it really transports you, and it kind of just feels like one really cool, clever, like dream. You know what I'm saying? It's just, it's such a special movie. I really do love Gale Weathers, especially in that first and second movie. I mean, her lines, calling Kenny a fat tub of lard. It's just so darkly funny. She's great. Matthew Lillard does not get enough credit.
Great chemistry.
He's for being
So good.
Stu and Jamie Kennedy. Rose McGowan is so special. See, the movies in the franchise that I love best are when Sid either has a boyfriend or has a best friend, and she hasn't had a good close ally since 2. 3 and 4, she's really by herself. I know obviously she has Dewey, but Dewey's kind of like an older brother. Gail is a frenemy. She needs like a good girlfriend or a boyfriend that is either an ally or a suspect, you know? So, you know, hopefully
I was always so crushed
someone.
when Derek bites it. I was like, that always killed me, because I was just I really wanted them to end up together, because Derek was such a stand-up guy. I really just like wanted that to work out. And she wears his
necklace in 3.
Yeah, and it saves her. It saves her. Yeah. She takes it off and whips him in the face with it. Because she's got teeth. Because Sydney has teeth at the end of the day. And they fucking fight. They talk about sibling fighting.
God.
They just start beating the shit out of each other. And then there's this moment where, and it's a weird kind of moment, because it's actually like a really tender moment. There is this acknowledgement of because Sydney's always feeling so isolated, alone, and then she learns that she has this half sibling, and he is dying at her hand, and they grab each other and embrace as he's dying, because she's like, I never want to see you again, because I could never have a relationship with you, because you're literally a psychopath who murdered all my friends and infected my boyfriend with all this crazy shit, and that you were just a terrible person. But at the same time acknowledging that you are you're one of the last pieces of my mother, in the world that's not me. And which, by the way, it's implied but never suggested. I mean, he essentially killed his father. I mean, obviously, Lance Henriksen is his dad, and that's why he's a director. So, so he murders. Yeah, he totally murders his father in front of his half sister. But then they ruin it because they have to stay on brand with the last scare, and he has to stand up.
And it should not be Dewey doing that.
We just didn't need that.
It was too goofy. In the head. That was just
stupid. It was better that they just held hands and that he died, and that when he died, the ghost face died with him, because it was started with him and it ended with him. And that's why, again, Scream 1 through 3 perfectly. So no matter what happens in Scream 4 or 5, it doesn't matter, because our Scream story really ends at 3, and we can be content and happy with what that is. Yeah. Right? At the end of the day.
It is just interesting that a lot of younger people love Scream 4.
They love Scream 4. I don't understand why people love Scream 4. I just baffles my imagination.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's growing. It's grown on me, but way too many characters. Scream 4 should have been like Scream 2, where you have a ton of characters, but some of them don't have to die. Some of them we never see again. Right. Although I'd be open to seeing some of them again pop up.
Right, like Joel, Kirby or whatever.
Well, and then Kirby with 4, I think she's dead. In my version of 5, she's dead, and her death is a big deal. So that's my own story.
Gotcha. I just don't think, I just don't know why, I don't want anything to carry over from 4. Just pretend it doesn't fucking exist, at this point.
Well, I know.
I just don't need it to.
The 4th
the sheriff girl is.
She's back, which
I know
I'm
she's
shocked.
in that. That got leaked to me.
Yeah, okay, I thought for sure she would have died. I mean,
I think she's going to be married to
come back from 3. That's what I'm thinking, but I don't know. We'll see. That would be in my idea.
I wish Patrick Dempsey came back.
Right?
If you're going to bring back anybody, bring back Patrick Dempsey.
In my idea, Patrick Dempsey comes back, and he's actually involved in the murders.
Oh,
he's
okay.
A dirty cop.
Who,
sees something, he's not a mastermind. He's just he's working with someone else because he has his files on Sydney. I mean, that would be a twist, so I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. He was following the case.
Yeah. About her and her mom and everything. So how interesting if he came back and it's like, ooh, handsome, McDreamy, and you and Sid kind of had a brief thing that was almost going to be something, but obviously it didn't. Also, one last thing about Sid and how much we love Neve Campbell. I just truly love, and I never forgot, but it hit me on this latest rewatch. The first time we see her, she's typing away on a computer. And I think that really speaks volumes about her. She is smart. She is current. She's okay to be alone and working and, typing away. We could have seen her in a very different world where she's cooking or reading a magazine, but she is typing on the computer, and then we see that epic 911 aim chat, which is amazing.
That was so, and really has no reference in like it was such a weird, like obscure technology that never really caught on. Like you never saw that in other movies. Like it's very like a kid who watches that today. Actually, a kid who watches that today probably understands exactly what it is. But I was gonna like there. I feel like there's maybe like a period in, I don't know, I'm trying to think, maybe like in the aughts where you watch Scream and you're like, wait, what is that thing that she's doing?
Never,
like, that's
that
not
never
here
was
yet.
a thing. Totally. Yeah. Like
Never
that was fantasy. Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
but I just love how that computer quality in her
that she's
carries
not
over into
conventionally
2 and 3 as well. You know,
she's not conventionally like,
she's not like
whatever.
a nerd. She's not, you would never say we don't even know if she's that great of a student, right?
She's just a girl next door. She's just like an average girl next door.
And she is smart enough to just, I don't know, something about that. I feel like that in a very brief amount of seconds shows us, oh, okay, she is legit. And then how we get that fun moment in 2 where she's in the library and she gets like a text on the computer, and then in 3, like you said, she is on the computer, on her
with the headset
with talking to victims. It's only in 4, then she sort of loses any sort of computer element. So again, these little kernels are what go through my head where it's like, you need that for it to be a good Scream movie. We need to see her on the computer for 1 minute, You
just brought up one other thing that I've never really thought about. We got to talk about this and then we'll end it, because it's like, oh my God, we've not stopped talking. But no, that's okay. It's like this was a really good Scream talk. One thing that, in bringing up everything that you just said, what would have been very interesting? Scream is perfect the way it is, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But an interesting element based on Sydney's character and who she is, and like, how does Billy as a boyfriend fit? Like, what kind of catch is Billy? He's not the popular guy. He's not like. I
kind of got the vibe he is kind of popular, because in the Blockbuster scene, he's flanked by 2 girls that are like just staring at him. So I got the vibe he sort of was he's not really a jock, but he's just this cool, I'm trying to think in my own high school experience. It's tricky. He's just this cool kind of like bad boy, but he's not totally bad.
Is Stu a jock? Stu feels more popular. Stu and Tatum feel like a power couple.
Yes, but at the same time, Tatum, and what makes me just love her so much is, I bet you Tatum is popular, but she doesn't buy into that shit. She's like, everyone knows her, everyone loves her, she throws great parties, but she is personable. Too edgy for that. Because this group with Randy, they're very offbeat. It's a very
Randy's a nerd. Randy's like a straight up nerd.
Yeah, totally. So out of all of them, I feel like Stu is actually the most popular, well-known, as we see with his party, right? Obviously it's flooded with people, and everyone loves Tatum, the girls love Tatum, but I think what we love about her is she doesn't buy into that shit. She just wants to hang out with Sid and be the beer wench, as she calls herself, and just like with her silly pajamas when she has her like bunny rabbit in that scene, right. I love her. She's probably my most favorite character that has died. Obviously Randy's amazing, but Tatum is a very, very, very close second or equal.
But what would happen what if Scream actually went where Sydney's doesn't have a boyfriend per se, and Billy is really into her, and that we spend the whole narrative where it's kind of turning into a she's all that thing, where Billy is just like, we don't know what Billy's motivations are. There's a killer that's after her. She just wants to live a normal high school life and have so if we do a remake, that's what I want to see happen. Sydney doesn't have a boyfriend, and Billy gets really interested in her, and they're kind of doing the she's all that. So basically my remake is she's all that, where the big reveal is that Billy is the fucking killer,
right?
And and the reason why is because of what happened with Sydney's mother. So like all that stuff is there. The only difference, or the difference in this version, is that Billy and Sydney are not together, and that the whole movie adds this extra dimension of them bonding.
Did you watch the TV show, the MTV
I did
series?
watch. I watched the first 2 seasons. I didn't watch the third one.
The third is so rough, which is a shame,
I
because
heard
Roger Jackson came back to do the voice, and they had the mask again. But the third is rough. But I feel like the show, from what I remember, sort of did do that with the new boy in town, cool Billy-esque,
You're right.
And they were like getting to know each other and dating. But what I liked about the show is he's in season 1 and 2. He was not the season 1 killer, although he was. We just didn't find out until the end of season 2. I thought that was interesting to have a carryover character. Red herring. Yeah, who was involved but just didn't happen to get found out until later on when the time was right. I thought that was a clever twist. So
there's ways to skin this cat in the future, and we, Mark and I will be here, waiting in the wings when it happens, and it's going to be.
You and I need to chat after the new movie. Do you think you're going to see the new movie in theaters? I really don't want to go to the theater, but
no, I'm definitely have to. I'm going to have to go to the theater, and you are absolutely. Unequivocally, we were just talking about like what show could you be on. You are going to be. You are coming on my show. Yeah, and you are going to be my Scream guest, and I would love that. Done deal. If you want
me, let's do it, and we can talk even more about the franchise that we didn't get to hit today.
Yes, we will. We will explore all of that.
How that will change with 5. Yes. I'm sure. Okay, I'm excited.
Okay,
great. See you in a month, basically. Then, right?
Yes. See you in a month. Yes, we're doing this. It's happening.
Awesome. Okay, well, to wrap up Scream, everybody. Obviously, we know it was huge. We're talking about it 25 years later. It changed everything. It spawned all these horror films that we still love but are a little inferior. It made 173 million worldwide, becoming, I thought this was interesting. I didn't know this, Jeff. It became the highest grossing slasher film until Halloween 2018.
Wow.
But when you adjust for inflation, Scream still made more money than Halloween 2018 at the box office. And to make it even more interesting, it made all that money, but it was never number 1 on any week of its release. It just stayed in theaters for months and was always hovering around like 2 to 8 and just kept making money, but it was never number 1, unlike 2 and 3. I don't think 4 was number 1. I know that was sort of a dud. And on the awards side, I'll never forget, Samuel L. Jackson and Mira Sorvino announced Scream was the best movie at the MTV Movie Awards that year.
Wow, really?
I don't know why. I will never forget that. I remember Mira Sorvino screamed when she opened the thing, and the whole cast was there. So of course it won some awards, spawned the movies, the TV show, like we said. So beautiful movie, beautiful franchise. Even when it stumbles, I just love this movie. I'm going to continue studying it for another 25 years,
Excellent. Absolutely.
There we go. All right. Well, thank you, Jeff. Any last thoughts about Scream before we say goodbye?
Nothing. I just can't wait. Yep. No, I just can't wait. I just can't wait. It's a Scream, baby. It's a Scream.
It's a 5 cream.
It's a 5 cream.